Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. I actually want to preface this with an apology. Uh, I'm trying not to do what I just did, which was to do these sort of marathon bursts where I tackle a whole bunch of titles sort of at the same time. Like for this batch, it took me about pretty much a weekend to get through 5 of the titles, and then now I'm starting to talk about them at around 2 in the morning on Tuesdays. So I think the quality has gone down a little bit, and as you probably would expect in doing a project like this, some episodes are going to be more interesting than others because they are a reflection on what I find interesting. There are some films that I find more interesting than others, and some are more easier to talk about than others. Certainly in terms of length, and then also in addition to content. So I apologize for the inconsistency. If you expect a consistent high quality every time, I'm not going to I'm not going to hit it out of the park every single time. But actually I shouldn't really apologize for that. What I really should be apologizing for is doing this kind of way of getting a whole bunch of titles all at once, and have the quality really suffer for it. So, but this is all a learning process anyway of how the best way to present this kind of material. So, but I'll watch by the end of all of this, I'll be an expert in how to do this. That's usually what happens. But moving right along, we go to Spine 143, That Obscure Object of Desire, directed by Luis Buñuel, 1977. This ended up being the last film that Buñuel directed, and I guess the best thing you could actually there's a lot of good things you can say about it, but certainly the best thing you can say about it is that if he did have to go, he certainly went out with a bang. Yeah. Actually, it's. I remember when this was one of those titles that I saw it fairly early on and I liked, and I probably said this before about kind of my approach to getting, like, when do I actually take the leap, when do I actually make the jump into getting a Criterion, into actually purchasing one for my shelf. I mean, because it's one thing to borrow it, whether you see it on Netflix, whether you see it at somebody's home, or you borrow it from a friend, or you borrow it from the library, but it's another to actually add the title onto your own shelf. So when do I actually make that leap? And a lot of it, because I know that there's a lot of titles I want, I certainly don't want every title on there. I'm not one of those. But I get the titles that I think I'm going to like, and I think that would be worth having as something readily available, for an assortment of reasons. So there's certainly a lot of titles I keep in mind, but then as far as actually, because I pace it out, usually what it comes down to is just if it's spur of the moment right there, where I feel like, you know what, this is the right time to add this. Early on, I would get these more on blind faith, and it's led to some. It's led to a lot of. I've actually been more fortunate in doing this than not. Mainly because I try to be as selective anyway. I don't go completely out on a limb. There is some calculation and some advanced planning, but usually reading something or reading the synopsis and just kind of getting into it. But even then, I do take it on a leap of faith. I do that a little bit less now, certainly because now I've gotten to the point where I can anticipate certain directors, and and obviously my research methods are a little bit better. And also, I think I'm maybe getting to a point where, because I have a lot of titles, it gets into diminishing marginal returns territory in some respects. I mean, it's probably not the best way to describe it, but certainly you get to kind of an overlord. So it's not overlord. Man, I'm tired. Not overlord, overload situation. So anyway, so that's kind of how I get it. And this was a title that I was interested in getting for a long time, but for a bunch of reasons, other titles kind of took precedent, and I was kind of also waiting for the right opportunity. Well, actually, I ended up the right opportunity to do this was right before it went out of print. Yes, this is another Studio Canal title that are now in North America. They're being distributed by Lionsgate in North America. So as both DVD and Blu-ray. So that's the story of that. So yes, this is another Studio Canal, and so actually there were plenty of other Buñuel titles that was unfortunately part of the out of print group. This includes The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie and The Milky Way and The Phantom of Liberty. Those titles I considered important enough to get right away. The only Buñuel title that I didn't get that did go out of print was Diary of a Chambermaid, but I forget exactly. I mean, I was already adding a lot of Buñuel titles to the shelf anyway, so I didn't know if I really needed to have another one. And maybe I felt that Diary of a Chambermaid wasn't probably that important of a film to add on to it. Whereas the other ones, I felt like they were more vital. I already had Discreet Charm long before it went out of print. So anyway, so now back to this one, That Obscure Object of Desire. I forget exactly what attracted me to it. Well, actually, I mean, it was, you know, according to the synopsis, it's exploring the dark side of erotic desire and just desire in general, and that's certainly what made me want to watch it. I forget exactly what made me like it the first time, and then looking back on it again, there's actually more to like about this one. Anyway, the film itself, it looks at it's about a man a bourgeois type, who is attracted to this Spanish immigrant in France named Conchita, and the gimmick actually it's unfair to call it a gimmick. It gives it its charm, and actually it helped give the film a certain interesting life and character. The same character is played by two different actresses, and they switch at various points. I'm just trying to remember. Cara Bouquet is one of the actresses, and Angela Molina is the other. And they alternate between playing these characters. So actually, I think it almost went over my head until near the end the first time, that I didn't realize that they were two different. They were actually two different actresses. But yeah, it was towards the end when it finally hit me. But anyways, the course of this film is this sort of cat and mouse game about, and it's all about fulfilling sexual desire. He wants to get her into bed and make her lose her virginity, and she keeps saying no in different ways, and keeps making the point, and there's this constant attraction repulsion that goes on. There's There are moments when they're really, really close, and there's moments where they fall apart, where they're further apart. But revisiting it now, I think it goes back to what you get from that synopsis, that it is exploring the nature of desire. And I think what I get out of this is that sometimes this is the danger of following your impulse or being led by desire. Like I said, with All That Heaven Allows, the what you can get out of that is that you learn that humans do not look at we don't look at each other on our own terms or on each other's terms. In other words, we don't see them as individuals in their own right with their own histories and particular personalities and distinct characteristics. We don't look at those. We tend to view other people as members of a larger group, and what status you're in, whether it be socioeconomic status or political status or whatever kind of arbitrary standards you meet. In the case of that obscure object of desire, it's more we not only do we not look at each other on our own terms, we don't get this as much here. Well, you get a little bit of it, but not in a big way. Certainly compared to, like, say, with All That Heaven Allows. But you tend to look at others as whether you are the satisfactory means to an end. And in the case of Mateo, the central male, played by Fernando Rey, although interestingly he's voiced by Michel Piccoli, for him it's satisfying. I mean, it's all about the sex for him, and it's really as simple and primitive as that. And the way he sees Conchica, either of them, and actually that's what makes it brilliant, is that not a lot of attention is brought into it, which is why I didn't notice it towards the end that there were actually two different actresses playing the same character. But anyways, he sees this he treats this as a game of conquest, and so it's not. I think you come away feeling that it's less about a genuine love, that there's something about Conchita that he actually likes. He's more interested in the game, in playing this game of winning her, and other verbs are used, including owning. This idea of possessing somebody. So really, it's love as a means to an end, not the end itself. Is what you get out of this, and what that does. There's also this it's not played up too much, but every now and then you get these tie-ins with political terrorist acts. There's a few bombings that happen. There's some sabotage moments that happen. Again, if you're gonna end your career, end it in a bang, and it does. Which is you can extrapolate a connection. What I get out of it is that actually there isn't that, to me, there isn't that much intersection. I think the intersection you can draw from it is how, and this is something that I think was something that interests Buñuel throughout his long film career, was there is a certain arbitrariness of the way things are practiced, I should say. I don't now. I'm not somebody that believes that morality is or that there. How to say this? I do believe that there can be a clearly defined sense of morality, that you can, right is right, wrong is wrong. It's not something that's we just pick out of, we pick out of a hat. It's not completely arbitrary, but I will say that. But having said that, I also understand, and by the way, I don't agree that this should linger and that we should rise above this, but I also understand that morality is something that is arbitrarily practiced. As I said when I talked a little bit about when I talked about the discrete charm of the bourgeoisie, what you get out of that is that morality is determined by the golden rule. And by what I mean by the golden rule is whoever has the gold makes the rules. And this certainly has that feel to it, that it's basically it's whoever has the means to be able to pull strings, that's who does it. And Matteo is definitely somebody who uses money and his position and his status to try to play the game his way. Now, what's interesting is that Conchita, lacking those things, is able to play on is able to not only meet him, but can often beat him. So, in other words, it's not it's not the means. Ultimately, he does not always come out on top. You would think that he would come up on top, but he gets there's often the rug gets pulled out from under him, and he gets thwarted, and so there is this constant battle. I also find it interesting for a director that has made this reputation of being subversive and going against the grain and rebelling against certain things. I also feel like there is a kind of, I don't want to say a conservatism, because he certainly wouldn't see it in that respect, but you do get a sense that it's not just, while he was one to play with absurdities and to, he was part of the surreal movement. He was very good friends with Dali, and that's how he got his start with filmmaking, was working with him and working in part of that. But I think ultimately it wasn't just returning to a state of chaos or this sort of free form, no rules whatsoever. I think there is a desire, in a matter of speaking, to have some kind of order, or to have some, or maybe not, order is not the best term, but to have some consistency, to have some certainties in life, where you don't feel like things are just purely arbitrary or things that purely happen by chance. And that, it's interesting that you kind of get that. Actually, another way of putting it is that for someone that liked exploring desire and liked, and this included erotic desire, how very conservative it feels. It doesn't draw too much attention to itself. This is not a film. This is not like watching Last Tango in Paris, or any of those films that are just dripping with sex. That's not the point of this. This is really looking at the human condition in a very playful way. Another thing I could say about this film is it is interesting that it does feel like it kind of goes full circle as far as his life and his career. Um, the the fact that you have this affair that involves both Spain and France parallels Buñuel. Like I said, this did end up being his last film. I don't think he intended it to be, but that's just how it happened. The last scene, I believe, I could be getting this fact wrong, but I do believe that the last scene, the boulevard they're at, was where Louis Buñuel's parents met, and I think that's where he was conceived. And there's a penultimate shot where this Mateo and Conchita are looking at through a shop window, and there's a woman that's standing, and she's mending I think it's supposed to be the wedding dress, but there's a prominent blood stain, and I believe this was the dress that Louis Buñuel's mother wore, or it was connected to it was somehow connected with the mother and either their marriage or his conception or one of those. So the idea that this again, it kind of, I don't think this was entirely intentional on his part, but I think because this ended up being his last film, it's a nice little full cycle affair where it's almost like you're going back to where you're started. You're going back to your origins. Another T.S. Eliot connection, apart from the whole ending with he does not end with a whimper. This is not what this is not one of those whimper ending cases. This is definitely a bang. So yeah, it's actually this makes as far as like disappointment, this makes me think of the Simpsons joke where and I think this would be a good time to do this because I do not have this on my shelf. When Nelson, like Bart, Nelson, Jimbo, they decide to, because this is during spring break. Bart ends up using a fake ID, and so they're gonna do all the adult things, and this includes going to see an R movie. And so the R movie they end up seeing is Naked Lunch, and then they walk out of the theater. Oh wait, yeah, and I remember Nelson, Milhouse, and Bart are in on this. But anyway, so they go to the theater to see Naked Lunch, and then they come out, and then Nelson looks up at the marquee and says, "I can name 2 things wrong with that title." So this is probably one of those films where you could probably walk away saying that I can name several things wrong with that title. Except, actually, it does live up to its title. It is about the nature of desire and how I think maybe what you come away with in the end is that you think you desire something, but you end up maybe it's not really the case. Like it's if part of desire is kind of nebulous and vague, and then the tendency is to incarnate that desire into somebody else, and then you end up like they become like the object, or the person becomes the object of your desire. Whereas really fundamentally the desire has nothing necessarily to do with the person. It's just satisfying an urge, in so many words. And then the danger is that because you're using another human being to satisfy your urges, it ends up being a very messy and ugly affair as you see over the course of the film. So I think in that sense I would recommend this. I mean, it's probably not going to change your life. I mean, if you don't end up seeing it, that's not the biggest loss or anything. But I mean, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I was able to get it. Again, it is out of print on Criterion. The studio, I mean, like most of the titles I've mentioned, I think there's only a few of them that are out of print, that are hard to obtain or difficult to obtain, even as not a Criterion. But this is one of those cases where it is fairly easy to obtain because it is a Studio Canal title, and the current holders of the North American rights to release them is Lionsgate. So it will be, they're gradually rolling it out there. So it's definitely fairly easy to see it in some form. And then of course you can go to your local library. You can, I don't know how many friends you may have that would go out of their way to have all the films of Louis Buñuel, but I'm sure you'll know somebody that has it. I mean, there's always that way. So I would say that if you like, certainly if you like Louis Buñuel, and particularly his late period films, which includes The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, it definitely is satisfying in that way. And to see a film that is about the erotic but doesn't necessarily depend a lot on the erotic, I would recommend it. I would say go for it. So yeah, yeah, I'm really tired. I need sleep. So I'm gonna get it soon. But yeah, that is that obscure object of desire. And until next time, take care.